India had no global companies worth mentioning. See, at this time, I have to talk about the LPG pursued by the India. Even around 1980s, India started to throw away all the fiscal conservatism. Earlier in India, what was done was a total or a strict licensing raj. For anything and everything, you have to obtain a license. Without obtaining a license, you cannot do any business. That has retarded the development of India for a very long time. Around 1980s, the Indian policy makers realized that India cannot progress if that system of licensing raj is continued. So slowly they have liberated the Indian economy, but not to the extent that is needed. The LPG, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization, was started in India vigorously only around 1990s. This is also not without any reason. In 1991, India witnessed a severe economic crisis. The foreign exchange resources which India was having can withstand import only for 1 week's time. At that time, the India was importing two major items. Number one is oil and number two is food grains. So the foreign exchange resource with India will be sufficient just for financing the import for 1 week. The entire world is watching what India is going to do. At that time, India was having a very good finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. You will be heard about him. And he cleverly tackled that situation. He went to the World Bank and IMF, got the release of the enough foreign exchange, and he started to practice, or he made Indian government to practice the LPG very vigorously. Only that has saved the crisis, and from that day onwards, India has started to progress. It has liberated from all these fiscal conservatism, and India has started to grow. And I have to talk about Dr. Manmohan Singh also. Have you read about Dr. Manmohan Singh? Presently, he is the Prime Minister of India. Actually, earlier Dr. Manmohan Singh was not a politician. He retired from the Reserve Bank of India as governor, and he was taking rest. He was brought to politics by the former Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. In fact, Narasimha Rao is not the person responsible for bringing Dr. Manmohan Singh to politics or for government. The foundations were laid by the late Rajiv Gandhi, who was assassinated. Rajiv Gandhi wanted to take, he's a different type of politician. Almost all the politicians, there may be one or two exceptions in India, were corrupt. The degree may vary. But Rajiv Gandhi wanted to take India to the 21st century, and he really meant that. He doesn't have that much of corruption. But after assassination, quite unexpectedly, Narasimha Rao became the Prime Minister, and he wanted to follow the ideals of Rajiv Gandhi. For that only, he invited Dr. Manmohan Singh to take up the finance ministry. Manmohan Singh was reluctant, he was not willing, but somehow or other Narasimha Rao convinced him. At that time, Manmohan Singh got an assurance from Narasimha Rao, I must be given a free hand. For which Narasimha Rao said yes, and that is why he was able to follow vigorously with this. So, what type of politician was Dr. Manmohan Singh? I have to narrate a story. When Congress government headed by Narasimha Rao, a legion of new global giants that are competing head to head with established American companies. Say, look at the ArcelorMittal and Tata Steel in steel making, the Bharat Forge and Sundaram Fasteners in car parts, the Hindalco in aluminium rolling, the Infosys, the Tata Consulting Services, Cognizant and HCl technologies and low affordability markets in Eastern Europe, Africa, Central America, Angola, to everyone in the world. It's not the exclusive prerogative of certain nations or the affluent few. In places where it is not available, the students often travel to other countries like USA for study and then bring the expertise to their home countries. If we examine the global landscape, we can see an increasingly imbalanced world. From an economic perspective, we have talked about the imbalances. The countries we can classify are the following 4 categories. The number 1, capital and knowledge-rich countries, such as G7, who have higher labor cost. The labor cost in those countries are exorbitantly prohibitive. Historically, they do not have significant market reach outside the G7. The number 2 is the natural resources rich countries such as the OPEC nations, Russia and South Africa. They are rich in natural resources, but they lack the skilled expertise and also the human capital. The third category is the human capital rich countries, but they lack the infrastructure, finance and access to global markets. They have abundant human capital. The best example is China and India. Then the rest of the countries, the all other countries, which by and large lack capital, expertise, human capital and also the market access. The developed world, which consists of mostly the G7, had no major problems until 1980s or 1970s. There was no major imbalance since they basically produced and consumed everything. They enjoyed a very good quality of life. The world is no longer isolated or unipolar or centered around the US. This imbalance have helped certain countries. How? See, the OPEC countries, around 1970s only, they realized and recognized the power of their key resource, the oil resources, which is otherwise called as the black gold. Until that time, they never realized they are having a very, very valuable resource. They successfully united and raised the price of oil from around $5 per barrel in the early 1970s to $30 in the late 1970s. A 600% increase in oil within a short span of 1 year. The development of OPEC nations are due to the enormous profit which they got simply by increasing the oil prices. So they never realized, they never thought that they can collect a huge amount of profit by simply raising the price of oil without doing anything. They did not increase the production. At that time, actually I do remember I was a student and I have read an article in the National Daily that when the king of Iran, Shah, is visiting India, the Hindu has given a very warm editorial, Shah of Iran, the VVIP of India. At that time, no other country was willing to provide oil for India, but the Iran was very much willing to provide oil, that too at the subsidized rate. That is why it was given so much of importance. The another country which helped India at that time was Russia, and that is why India aligned in favor of Russia, which irritated US, and that is why US have taken lot of steps against India. So that is why US was not willing to provide supercomputers, which India requested for a very long time. But fortunately, the reluctance of USA to supply the supercomputers have helped India in one way. The Indian scientists have produced a very good supercomputer, better than that of the Americans. This had created an inflationary, the increase in oil prices have created an inflationary situation in almost all the countries. This is also having a positive side. the affected countries have started to think about the alternative source of energy. At the height of the OPEC oil embargo of 1975, the Japanese auto industry started to produce fuel efficient cars. Until that time, the concept known as fuel efficiency does not have any place. Nobody talked about fuel efficiency because there is no need for that. But the inflationary situation created by the increase in oil prices have made all these a possibility. Thus, the developed nations, of course, once upon a time the developed nations are slowly giving away for other nations to grow. There is no other go. The oil-rich countries are growing, for example, the OPEC. The populous countries are fast developing, such as China and India. At the global level, the basis of competition is also shifting. The cost-based competition, which is cost plus profit, a certain percentage of profit margin, is no longer helping the industries. The differentiate a product, that is, differentiating a product or service can lock a customer in for a long time. In the case of petrol, there is no product differentiation. That is why we go for one petrol bunk today and tomorrow we switch over to other petrol bunk. But the Japanese added value in the car in the form of fuel efficiency. If you are offering the same product without any product differentiation, the customers will not remain with us for a very long time. So to overcome that problem, the Japanese added a concept, a value, which is called as fuel efficiency. See what happened, even around 1975, at the height of the oil crisis, the Japanese car manufacturer